And the room goes silent.
Hello, everybody. We are back with another week of Tales from the Tavern. Thank you all for being here. I just want to say really quickly that it's so awesome to see so many people here right when we get started. It's super appreciated that you guys all take time out of your schedules to come and hang out with us. So I'm really, really glad that you're here. We've got a super, super fun group here tonight. Some people that have been on the stream before, others that are totally new faces. So I'm going to let all of our guests go around and introduce themselves and just tell us a little about who they are. And then we will get on with the show. If this is your first time joining us, I do just want to let you know that we take all of our questions from chat. You guys really drive our conversation. So please feel free to ask us questions. We have moderators that will make sure that we see them. So just drop them right into chat. You don't have to tag anybody or anything. And we will get them and we will answer them hopefully as best as we can, but we have been known to go off on tangents before. So we're going to start, Mel, we're going to start with you. If you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little about who you are.
Hi, I'm Mel. You can find me on Twitter at JellyMellyDraws. I am a player and the co-creative director of Lionhead Gaming, a TTRPG stream here on Twitch and also podcasts. And I primarily, outside of being a player on that show and helping with the production, I tend to do character art, magic items, scene draws, and even graphic design.
Excellent. Well, I'm so glad that you have been able to come on. I've had Lion on in the past, but I think this is your first time with us here. Huh?
It is!
Yeah!
I finally had
Yay!
time!
I'm so excited that you're here. And yes, please check out Mel's art. She did a fantastic drawing of one of my characters back in October, actually, and it was amazing. So feel free to check her out. And next we're going to go to Chris. Maybe?
Crap, push to talk doesn't like me.
There we go.
Hi, I'm Chris. I also go by Saint. I am the DM for Discount Dungeons. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for 16 going on 17 years now. I've been a huge nerd all my life. That's really all there is to me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming back again. This is your, third appearance on this channel now? I mean, we might as well just make you a regular cast member at this point.
I want to say, I think this is the third, no, this is the second time I've been on, and I DM'd for you once.
And you DM'd for us once back at Halloween. Yeah, it was super fun. And it's great to have you back again. So thanks for jumping in.
I love being here.
Yeah. And next we're going to go over to SmugLookingBarrel.
Hello, I'm the SmugLookingBarrel. I don't have any fancy Twitter or Twitch, but I play some D&D, run some fun games, number crunch, and generally have a good time.
Excellent. And thank you so much for being willing to come and hang out. It's always nice to have new people to hang out and chat with and get some ideas from. So we're glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Spencer, let's go to you next.
Hey, I'm Spencer, and I'm actually more involved with board game media. I run the Lighten Up initiative, where I create board game media with a lighter touch. The only RPG I've ever played is Call of Cthulhu, so no D&D experience for me, but I'm excited to be here. Maybe bring up some board games or something.
Definitely, yeah. So a lot of times our chat will ask questions about TTRPGs, but we have a board game person here tonight, so feel free to ask questions about that too. So, and of course, really like any nerd table. Wow, we are off to a great start. Star, let's go to you.
I am Star Shinobi on Twitter and Instagram. Generally, I just like to talk about D&D and TTRPGs on Twitter, ask as many questions as I can. I also create magic items, apparently now when I feel like it, but I do try. And I will soon have a D&D supplement come out, which I'm super excited about.
It's super exciting. I'm so excited for you. Let's see how many times we could say exciting tonight. It'll be great. So also tonight, I just want to announce, and our guests are all free to enter if they would like to. Tonight and Wednesday, we're running a giveaway on our stream, so you do not have to be present to win if you can't make it to either, to the Wednesday night stream. We're going to draw the winner. We are giving away a set of dice from D&D WoW. They are very cool. I have them right here in my possession. They are color-changing dice depending on how you look at them in the light. So they are metal. They're kind of like a copper color metal. And if you look at them one way, they look kind of like a coppery, bronzy, orangish color. And then if you shift them just slightly, they turn like a green color in where the numbers are. So it's very cool. And the font is very Harry Potter-ish because it's not Harry Potter font. And so if you
legally
win,
distinct for copyright reasons.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. So if you win, you do not have to be present. We will announce it both in our Discord and on Twitter. So keep an eye on both of those. And it's a full polyhedral set. So you'll get all 7 dice and a nice little velvet dice bag for them all as well. So that giveaway is open, and it's !ticket to enter. You can only enter once, even if you're here for both streams. So just want to make that clear. And we will draw the winner Wednesday at the end of our stream. So yeah, so I just want to make sure people know about that. !ticket to enter, and we will have that running for the next few days. All right. So normally I start by posing a question, but we've already got questions coming in, so we're just gonna dive in.
Hey.
And Saint, I just saw your question, your message. Don't tell Patch.
Yeah, got it.
Agree.
For those of you who don't know Patch is a compulsive winner. He has won more giveaways than...
Yeah, there are some people who just have all the luck with these online draws and raffles.
Yeah. He's just the lucky dude. So, all right. So the first question that we've already started getting is, let's see, we've gotten I saw one, and it was from David Tilstra. What board game would you recommend to a person trying to get into board games?
Good question. That's a question a lot of people ask because there are a lot of people getting into board games these days, especially if you're having to stay home or whatnot. But it really depends on the kind of subject that you're into. Of course, there's like these days a board game about anything. Like there's a board game about making dresses for the King's Ball or whatever. But one of my favorite games that's came out last year, it's a cooperative game. It's called Horrified, and basically what you're doing is you're playing as these different characters, and you're fighting against the Universal movie monsters. So the Mummy, Wolfman, whatever the Invisible Man, whatever the rest of them are, and you can play against as many of them as you want to. You can play against 2, 3, 4. I think there are 6 total, and so that's how you can increase the difficulty. But it's a super easy to understand game. You have like 4 actions you can do, and there are a list of 4 different things you can do, or however many, whatever the different actions are. I don't remember it right now, but it's so much fun. It's easy to learn. It's great for just people to play together and have a good time, and especially cooperative games in general, I think, are great to start with.
Yeah, my answer to that would be the board game version of another game or property you already like. So, for example, I used to be big into the TV show Firefly, if you've heard of that. There was a Firefly board game, and that was one of the first board games I really got into. And one of the big problems with board games that hinders sort of getting into it is learning the rules. And when you have context, when you can say, oh, well, this is like the show, or this is like the game, that can help you get into the rules and understand them more naturally.
Yeah, when rules make sense thematically, it definitely helps you understand them much better.
Yeah, I was going to say something that tends to be on the rules lighter side. One of my favorite things for starting people out as a game like Pandemic is co-op. It's pretty easy. The colors are distinct. You just draw a card. You have a few actions, and the reference cards are pretty good. So, like, yeah, it takes a few games, but it's also you're not playing the same game for like 4 hours. So it's like generally a little bit easier to digest because it's fairly quick to play. I find that's very easy for getting people into it as well.
Yeah, right now probably not the the best time to play a game called Pandemic.
Yeah, no, a little too on the nose.
A little too on the nose.
They have several versions though, so you don't have to play the basic Pandemic one. You can do Rising Tide, which you're trying to prevent the flood of the Netherlands. Some cool different variants that you can try out too.
Interesting.
When it comes to when I'm trying to get people into board games, I try to pick those board games that have simple rules but can be played over and over again with different layouts. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the Forbidden series, like Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Island, Forbidden Sky.
Yeah,
But it's essentially a tile-based game that you mix up the tiles and you put them down, so the game is different every time. But it's really simple and they're fast games. So you can play for 15 minutes, you can play for 2 hours if you want, and then you can get them into things like Dead of Winter.
I like the game Tsuro, Tsuro. It's another like really easy to learn, easy to play, quick game that just has really nice art. I just really like it. My daughter is 13. I've owned a copy of the game. I've owned the game. Oh my gosh, probably since she was like, I don't know, 9 or something like that. And she will still like pull it out and be like, let's play this, you know, because you can play with 2 people. You can play with, I think, up to like 8 people. The more people you play with, the harder it is, which is really fun. Because basically the whole thing is you just lay down these tiles that have different paths on them. So basically you're building the path for your dragon. And anybody who knows me knows that dragons are my jam. And, so you're basically creating a path for your dragon to go on, and the whole point is to not run into another dragon and to not put yourself off the board. So you have to be really careful about how you put your tiles down. So obviously the more people there are, the harder it can be. But game with 2 people can go surprisingly fast if you're not paying very close attention.
Have you seen Tsuro of the Seas, the other version?
I've seen it. I don't have it, but it's on my to get list.
Yeah, I haven't played the original, but that one's definitely a lot of fun.
Good to know. I'm a fan of the original. It's a very quick game. It takes like 15, 20 minutes tops.
Yeah.
At least when you have like 4 or 6 people playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sea one adds, like, you've got to look out for sea monsters and whirlpools that'll come along, and you have to dodge those with your paths. So there's a little bit more planning that goes into laying those tiles down. So if you want something that's a little bit more of a challenge, then that's definitely the direction you could go.
Any other thoughts, anybody?
I was saying, so like we started about like a board game that's good for getting people into it. Like, what's a good intermediate board game for someone who's maybe played before enough times, but is looking for something a little bit more challenging, but not like something that's going to end friendships? Monopoly, Risk, those things come to mind.
Again, it kind of helps knowing what you are interested in that can lead you to, you know, the game that might be best for you. Like there's a game called Lords of Waterdeep, and it's a really great introduction medium. Yeah, it's a great one to learn, to understand, and have a great time. I mean, you've got, you know, games in the Cthulhu mythos like Elder Sign, which is a great dice rolling kind of Yahtzee style thing where you roll and trying to get these different symbols and you push your luck kind of thing going on. And then even something like Colt Express, where you've got this 3D cardboard train and you're these bandits running around it trying to loot the jewelry and gold that's on the train, but you're programming your actions, but you don't know what everybody else is doing, so you end up causing all this chaos. Like you'll punch the air, or you'll shoot somebody that's 3 cars away, or you end up doing something that you didn't mean to. It's pretty chaotic, but it's a lot of fun.
Chaos is fun.
I was gonna suggest Small World until you said, you know, friendship enders. So, well, then that's not so good.
Maybe not that one. All right. Well, David also asked another question. He would like to know, what magic item would you like to have in real life?
All of them?
Right?
Are we
Yes.
like homebrew or like official?
I would go with either.
Alright, easy answer for me. Headband of intellect. Put a head on, be smart. Sign me up.
So my druid in our Thursday game recently crafted a cloak that looked like butterfly wings in a long-term crafting journey to eventually give herself like pixie wings, Thumbelina style, to like fly and
Nice.
stuff. And I have a butterfly cape in my closet, so I guess that's what I would go with, just actual wings to fly.
That's amazing.
I would have to go with Ring of Wishes.
That
Alright, well, I suppose that begs a follow-up question. What would you wish for?
Immortality, invulnerability, and not really sure what else. I'd probably just leave the last one floating to save the world from some stupid thing that's inevitably going to come along.
Like another pandemic, maybe.
Oh, no.
I've thought of that question for like a really long time, and I realized it's the simplicity for me. I would wish for the ability to just stop all time around me, so that when I don't want to work, it doesn't actually become a problem because I've stopped time, and I could just wait. Right, that's it. That's all I want. I just want to stop time so I can procrastinate with no consequences. That's not a lot to ask for.
I'm gonna double down on that answer. Yep, that's the one.
I mean, I'm kind of curious what the effects of localized time stopping would have on quantum mechanics and whatnot.
Yeah, you see, I don't like to think that far because if I start thinking about myself aging when I paused everything else, that's terrifying. So,
I mean, that's just Doctor Who. I mean,
We all know how scientifically accurate that is.
oh, absolutely, it's right
Yes,
on
of course.
point. Why you got to bring logic into this conversation? I don't understand.
Literally what I went to school for.
In terms of magic items, I've been looking through Tasha's, and honestly, some of those magic tattoos seem pretty sweet.
I really need to spend some time with that book.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah, I've been starting to dig into it. It's pretty good.
Some of the artifacts they came out with are just like, why?
Yeah.
There's a giant robot, which is great. Great, you can get a giant robot.
I mean, I think the only thing about the magic items in Tasha's that I was kind of like, really, is the class restrictions on so many of them.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, the spellbooks are obviously going to be wizard related, and you want an item that's unique to each class that kind of makes that class like, oh, this is just something that's kind of like my shtick and my thing. But yeah, it can also be kind of annoying when it's like, oh, well, I really like the idea of this, but oops, can't have it.
Yeah, and
need to make the thief rogue's ability that lets them ignore magic item restrictions useful for something.
I mean, that's great for Holy Avengers, though.
Yes.
I have no idea what magic item I would choose.
so
I
many
mean, if
good
you're
ones.
a fan of Chaos, there's the Deck of Many Things.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta love the
that
deck.
would be
You gotta love the deck.
that would be quite something.
Everyone has a story about the deck.
You know,
Have you ever seen it actually used?
I was just gonna
There's a
say.
reason why DMs hate it.
I was gonna say I've never had a DM use it.
Same.
Yeah, neither have I.
I've been the DM who used it. So much regret. So
Oh.
Well, now we need to know what happened.
yeah.
Story time.
Okay, well, Luna knows part of this. Back in college, right around our senior finals, I did this mini campaign known as the Barbarian Arc. We played as custom-made 2E barbarians. I gave them godlike stats. They wrecked things they had no right wrecking. So I throw out the deck of many wishes, many things, and my now wife, her character, pulls the one that gives you 1d4 plus 1 wishes. She rolls maximal. And one of the items that was in there was a cursed item that the other character who was obsessed with bears put on, and she could only speak like a bear. So my wife wishes that she could go back in time and stop her from donning the cloak. So she goes back in time, forgets that she has 3 wishes. But it specifically says whenever you say wish, it'll trigger the power. So she can never say the word wish again. But her character doesn't know she can't say wish.
That I like that a
would be
lot.
Fantastic.
That's brutal. And amazing.
And a great way to control what's happening.
Yeah.
But that was just one draw from the deck, and they went crazy with this deck at one point. Like, someone ended up having a Pit Fiend as an enemy. Someone summoned an Efreet from nowhere, which if he beat, he'd gain a level for free, no questions asked. And then someone got their soul imprisoned somewhere in the underworld, and then someone was utterly obliterated from existence.
Sounds like a typical day with the deck of many things.
I've used it once. I've had my fun. Never again.
Done.
We did it, and of course, all of us pulled cards, and we got lucky, and nothing extremely terrible happened. But one of our characters did get turned into a halfling-sized duck for the rest of the campaign, and that was pretty awesome.
That's amazing.
That was the best outcome that could have ever happened.
Actually, yeah.
We haven't interacted with that in our games, and I feel like that's just because all of the DMs do not want to, or if they provided, it would be with a lot of like restrictions and a lot of DM control to make sure extremely bad things don't happen, or what all.
Then it's not the deck
I
of
think
many
it'd be fun
things.
for like a one-shot or something, but in a serious campaign, it has a serious potential to ruin the campaign and just end it right there.
Well, I think that's why they would have a lot of control over it, because it's about the chaos versus the fun for the rest of the table. When you have a table that want to build a story, you have to start thinking about, okay, do I let this game ender into the world, or do I just hold it back for the sake of everyone else still being able to play here?
I mean, like, when we used it, we did alter it slightly, so there wasn't like an instant death and an instant level up, but it was things like you could gain an extra proficiency, and if you got the Void card, your soul didn't disappear and you turn into a nothing husk. It was your soul was trapped somewhere else, so you are now a soulless being that has a charisma of 4. So it kind of changed it so that it would be detrimental, but not game-stopping. Because if someone's soul is gone, now we got to deal with this right now.
Yeah, it's one of those things is that it's generally really good to, like, once you've hit, like, that 15th, 17th, 20 hump where it's like, just going after monsters isn't fun. We've already dealt with that interdimensional threat or whatever. It sounds like, well, I'm going to let you be your own villains in your story by giving you this item that can just give you something really nice or utterly ruin your day and just let you create the quests for me. It's really good once you've gotten to the epic levels and you're just like, I have no idea what to throw you guys at anymore, because you've conquered everything. You've gotten your stories. You've gotten your magic items. You set yourselves up. You've saved the world, yada, yada, yada. Where do you go from that other than retirement? And what are retired adventurers going to actually do? Well, they're going to pull out a random deck from all the crap they've ever accumulated over the course of their adventures and draw cards from it, because let's just play a game of poker. Just a nice, simple game of poker, and that's when the DM go, oh yeah, it's a deck of many things. Now the fun really starts.
They have dealt the cards, and now everybody has one, and they have to use it.
Exactly.
I love it. I love that.
But there is a toned-down version they put out in one of the Extra Life modules, the Infernal Machine Rebuild. There's a toned-down version of the deck, which is very good for, like, a DM's just like, I want a little bit of chaos, but I don't want to break the game in any meaningful capacity.
All right, let's see. We had a couple other questions. Let's see. Nekla the Druid would like to know, what's your favorite setting to play in? Example, high fantasy, space, steampunk, etc.
It genuinely varies for me. I've had the high fantasy, the mid fantasy. We've got a Greek fantasy thing that we're doing. We've done sci-fi. I think the one I haven't really done is something that's like modern setting, like a modern day, but with magic kind of setting sort of thing. So I wouldn't say like I have a favorite. I'm just really more about like, what's the setting and what character do I want to interact with this setting sort of deal.
One of my favorite theme in board games, and it also worked in tabletop RPG, is the Cthulhu mythos, and especially when it's set in the 1920s, being those investigators with different abilities. I just love the time period and almost like a noir feeling to it. That's something that's really enjoyable, and I like that there are so many different ways you can explore that, whether it's in the RPG or in the board game form.
Yeah, the 1920s feels like a very strong place for the Cthulhu game as a whole, because it's got that right level of tech, but not too much tech.
Exactly, yeah.
As far as D&D, I've only ever played high fantasy, so I guess that will make it my favorite by default. In terms of more general fiction, my favorite is sci-fi. So I would be interested in playing a sci-fi D&D game, but I've never actually done it.
Yeah, and I think I'm in the same boat of high fantasy and mid fantasy is my favorite. I'm not a huge fan of modern, and in all honesty, it's for me, once you put a gun in the game, it kind of starts to not be as fun to me. Not saying in general that the way it should go, but it's just, to me, it's a little less fun. However, I do really like the idea of Call of Cthulhu, and that's just a little bit of a different one of, if I play Call of Cthulhu, that 1920s almost steampunky idea sounds fun, but yeah, I'm more of a high fantasy girl and gothic horror.
Yeah, the issue I have with modern, sort of modern with magic, or modern in general, that high fantasy, sci-fi, and 1920s Cthulhu all manage to circumvent is in modern, you would need to explain a lot of things. You would need to explain how certain things work and how they interact with each other in a way that you can handwave in fantasy, in sci-fi, or in Eldritch Abomination Land.
Good point.
Yeah, one of the struggles I have with playing a more modern setting, and I've played a couple, is kind of like you start in that, like, it's the type of weapons that are used, and it's not so much like a lack of magic. You know, that's not really the issue, because I rarely play a magic user in a high fantasy game anyway. But for me, it's like, it's understanding the mechanics of how the weapon works. Like, I get that a mace goes bam, you know, I get that a sword will slash somebody, but the mechanics of, like, when I hear somebody who's playing a more modern campaign that uses guns, for example, they're like, oh yeah, I do this with the gun, and I'm like, that doesn't mean anything to me, because I know nothing about firearms. So it's like, I feel like I would probably enjoy playing it, but as a player, I feel like I would be woefully inadequate at RPing that without that knowledge.
Yeah, the other thing that fantasy has over specifically modern is in fantasy worlds like D&D, you can get shot by a longbow and reasonably explain why it didn't kill you, even though, like, realistically it probably should. Not many people actually have experience of what it is like to get shot by a longbow.
Yeah.
And sci-fi has that too. But in real life, if somebody shoots you with a gun, you're probably going to die. But in a real-life RPG, like, that wouldn't make for fun gameplay, because you do not want characters that die in one hit. So there would probably be a little bit of disconnect there with, why are these weapons not as lethal as I know them to be, because I have an immediate point of reference. Whereas for fantasy, we don't have that.
Actually, to circumvent that point a little bit, have you ever heard of an RPG called Dungeon World?
I've heard of it. I know very little about it.
It's a very gritty version of, like, D&D, where your character, even at high levels, does get one-shotted even by, like, a longsword. So, like, there is that equivalent. So it comes down to how baked into the rules it is. So, like, you can play D&D with very low hit points, where a longbow, I mean, that's essentially first and second level. Like, a longbow is lethal, and it has the same lethality for characters as we do in the real world. Where that lethality begins to break down is once you get 5th and higher. Yeah. And that could be, like, at that point, you tank a literal flame cannon to the face, and you just brush it off.
Yeah, so the closest I've experienced to that is I've done LARPing, and in LARPing, at least in the rules that I was using, if you get hit by a sword, it kills you. But warping is sort of different because you can, first of all, you can use your skill, right? If you're actually fighting with swords, you can not get hit by someone's swords, whereas the fact that Dungeons and Dragons, it's just a simple dice roll, and no amount of actually being skilled, like we abstract that all away, means that it is quite easy for you to just die really quickly in a way that you had no control over.
I mean, in that same vein, I think also a reason why I enjoy the less technologically advanced settings is I feel like there are a lot more easy answers in those technologically advanced ones. And I mean, I know we have magic items that do insane things, but it's things as simple as, oh, we need to go talk to somebody. Well, in D&D, it's either you have a sending spell that's limited use, you have a sending stone and you hope it's with the right person, or you walk. Whereas in something like Vampire the Masquerade or a more advanced one, it's like, I'm just going to call them on my cell phone and let them know it's coming.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that I like that extra challenge of not having modern technology to fix my problems. Even though I know, like I said, we have magic items that can do some of those things when you obtain them.
That's actually a pretty good... Oh, sorry.
I agree with that point, but I'm also like sitting here thinking, how many times have you tried to call someone and they just didn't answer? How many times have you tried to call somebody in a location and you didn't have service? How many times have you pulled out your phone and it was dead because you were using it as a GPS just to get to the location? Now you need to make a phone call, or your data has run out, and I think that's kind of where I get a little hung up on the argument of, well, there's not a lot of things to hand wave. Real life has a lot of obstacles to it, y'all.
That's a good point.
Like, why doesn't a gun just one shot you? Not everybody that uses a gun is going to give you a fatal wound. And you can have this argument similarly with, why isn't it that every time you get hit by the fighter and their 4 attacks with their giant axe or their two-handed weapons, why doesn't that instantly kill you? Well, you have armor on. Well, why aren't you unconscious? You have, people are constantly arguing, is HP how many blood you're losing or how much stamina you're losing in a fight? And I think you can apply that same logic when it comes to a modern setting also.
That is a good point.
Yeah, it's actually pretty easy. One of the games I played is Shadowrun, which is set in the future, where you wear this giant, never-ending battery-powered cell phone on your wrist to do everything. And yeah, it does put a lot more pressure on the DM in terms of going okay, which version of the excuse am I using that I don't want you to be able to contact this person at this time? But it's one of those things is that it's pretty easy to hand wave. It's just like, yeah, you're in a dead zone right now. Or, oh yeah, that bullet, yeah, it grazed your thing. You're going to need to spend 2 hours fixing it back up so you can make that call. So it's really not that hard. It's actually why I've started enjoying blending elements of steampunk into my high fantasy settings, because it gives those touchstones that we recognize from the real world. So it's like, oh, it's cool. We have this and we have this. And it allows me to go yeah, but it's not as advanced as we have. So I can tailor it a little bit. Yeah, that cell phone you have, it makes 2 calls before it just doesn't work for a month and a half. Sorry. Or that gun, because that's actually one of the questions I saw in here. It's a funny story or joke that continued involved Dragon Heist, where they had guns. It didn't really break or change anything. It was we used to laugh at how easy you could shrug off a gunshot, sure, but it was still a weapon that scared them. It was this nice steampunky element that added this unique level of fantasy to the world. It wasn't just oh, it's only swords and bows. There's this third option that's unique and new.
The one shot that I played the other night was, I was saying before stream, and anybody that's in chat that caught it on Friday, is called Aether and Steamworks, and it's a little bit steampunk, also meets some medium fantasy in a way, because there's magic as well. And so it's a really neat blend of the two, where you still feel like you get that fantasy setting, but you also get some of the technology that people who like to play more modern games play. And so it was really neat in that regard. there's things like airships and, we were literally playing on a station in space, but then there's also, goblins and, other types of characters that are somewhat familiar, in the fantasy world as well. So it was kind of a nice blend of the two without feeling like I had to know a lot about one setting or another, because I could take... It was more like, in that case, it was more learning the system. Learning the world was more like, okay, I can take what I know about, high fantasy settings and that sort of things. Chat's like, F for rivet and our tech that breaks and, things like that. So, it made it very interesting because it was like, okay, great, you're going to try to use this air duct. Oh, but guess what? The air duct just broke when you climbed into it because you were too big. So now if you try to climb through it, you've got to figure out another way across. So somebody ended up using magic to get across. So yeah, I mean, there are ways to blend it, I think, successfully if you look for it.
Also, how many times have you people had issues with streaming? Like, that alone should prove the technology.
You're streaming on so many different technical things. You need an internet service provider, which is going to vary depending on where you are. You need to have the machine that can handle it depending on what you're doing. There's just a lot involved. The modern day doesn't make things easier. If anything, our technology makes things really, really, really difficult. And I would love to play in a modern day setting that acknowledges that and can even give the DM tools like, hey, here are things that could go wrong with everything that your players think is an easy get around.
Yeah.
Blue screen of death.
Blue screen of death.
And the world with a floppy disk.
And the reader, though. We have to find a reader.
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh, it makes me
I
think
wonder
of,
how
like...
many...
Go ahead, Chris.
I wonder how many people don't know what a floppy disk is these days.
The little ones. Because they've never and I don't blame them because they've never seen one before. So I
know my cousin who's like 21 hasn't seen one either.
I was gonna say I know 20-year-olds who have no idea what it is.
I was gonna say my daughter's gonna be 13 on Thursday and has never seen one except for in like, we've been rewatching a lot of like 80s stuff lately, and so I'll be like, this is back before there was internet in everybody's house, and she's like, whoa. Yeah, Nick says, you mean the save file icon?
Yeah, that's
the save file icon.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so funny. We've been rewatching Punky Brewster lately. It's been hilarious. Nick, thank you so much for the subs. The gift sub to Star.
Thank you.
All right, so Brianna Jean asked a good question. What are some favorite jokes that have happened? I'm going to broaden this out. She said in session, but I'm also going to toss it out there like with board games that you've played or things like that. So what are some funny things that have happened or jokes that have come out of that?
Well, since we talked about the deck of many things already, so like I said, one of our people got turned into a 3-foot duck that could speak. And this was middle of the campaign, so we're still out saving people and doing things, and suddenly she decided our name were the Mighty Ducks. Yeah, so that's how we got our group name. And then without us knowing, like, she had talked to the DM and she's like, we now have tunics made that says, I was saved by the Mighty Ducks and all I got was this quacking shirt. And she hired this like urchin courier to distribute these out to all the people we had helped throughout the campaign. And so now that's the big joke, is I was saved by the Mighty Ducks and all I got was this quacking shirt. And it has her picture on it. It's pretty great.
That's cute.
I think we need a round of applause.
That was good. I know, right? I like it.
Well, since I already started mentioning this, back in Water Heist, our friend Sean, who played Skizzix in Season 1, was playing a rogue named Rindo. Rindo was a bullet magnet. Every round, he would get every time there was a combat, he'd get shot and he'd go down. Just how it played out. No matter what level, he would go down in the first round of combat. So he got the nickname 50 Kappa because of how many times he's been shot. So he started like making rap albums in the background that, because he was a con artist, they didn't work. So that was the joke, is that whenever someone gets shot, we call them 50 cop.
All right. I don't have anything that turned into a specific joke, but I certainly have a few funny moments from my campaign that I just finished up recently. So, funny moment number one, the players had just finished battling a horde of monsters. I figured exactly what they were. All they had to do was cross a rickety rope bridge to get across to the other side where the dungeon continued. And of course, the party rogue was like, "Oh, go first," and marched across, made their acrobatics check perfectly, made it all the way across. Then the party cleric went and was like, "All right, make their acrobatics check." Failed. Rolled a dexterity save. Failed. Tumbled down the pit. And it ended up being like almost an hour of players trying to stay on the bridge, trying to climb up because there was. They had to like throw ropes down and try and figure out how to get back up. Then everyone was across except for the party warlock, and so they call across from the other side of the bridge. "Okay, it's your turn." The party warlock like snaps their fingers, thunder steps across the pit, and the entire rest of the party stares at them speechless. And the fighter's like, "You could have done that the whole time?" And the warlock's like, "Yeah."
We have, it's kind of a running joke in our Thursday game. So towards like the beginning, like our first 20 sessions, the party wasn't really like close, or they weren't, friends or anything. And we just arrived to this town where we met a person that we knew, and she invited us over for dinner later that night. For some reason, no, I know the reason. We also like acquired an undead that we needed to investigate, but we didn't want to bring it in town. So we're sitting outside this stupid town, and we're like, okay, well, maybe we should get to know each other. How do we do that? Oh, hey, let's play Truth or Dare. Everybody was bad. Well, okay, everyone was bad at it because we had like 2 sheltered PCs, mine included, who's like, how do you play this game? And he's like, okay, well, if you pick Dare, you just tell him what to do. Oh, okay, I dare you, my tabaxi friend who loves climbing, I dare you to climb that tree. Cool. And then they dared me to do the same thing. And now every time we hit like a point where it's quiet, it's like, hey, what do we do? It's like, does anyone want to play Truth or Dare again?
All right. I've actually got, so on the subject of like funny games that the D&D party took really seriously, this was at a tavern when the party were sort of cooling off after a session. They had a little too much to drink, and one thing led to another. We ended up in an arm wrestling tournament. And the funny thing about the arm wrestling tournament is that all of the party's magic powers were on the table. So we had the party bard who had 8 strength, and I ruled that arm wrestling, you had to win 3 strength checks in order to pin the other person's arm. And the party bard was using their cutting words to penalize other people's strength checks to win arm wrestling. And the party warlock, the same one from before, had Dark One's own luck. So it's like, I use my Dark One's own luck to boost my arm wrestling. And eventually the party bard managed to take down the fighter and the rogues and everyone else, and become, with 8 strength and lots of magic, the party arm wrestling champion. And I thought it was so funny because they took it so seriously.
Had a game where we had one guy in our party who was played by Yachts, who was a magic user. He was a wizard. And he managed to convince our barbarian and our cleric that the mead in the tavern that we were drinking was haunted by conjuring up like a little tiny like mead elemental in the cup.
That's perfect.
And
that's great.
So then, of course, it led to this whole thing that they were like, oh my god, the mead's haunted. Oh my god, what if the water is haunted? And so they go running out to the fountain in the town square and jump in, and they're like hacking and slashing at the water. And they're like, the water's haunted!
Oh my god.
Because we had seen water elementals in the river at the other end of town. And so naturally that meant the water was haunted.
Of course.
So, yeah, so it was really funny.
Water elementals can Hi.
We had a some art drawn up of the whole group at the tavern, and the artist that did it was really good about putting, like, you know, just little, like, almost like hidden picture things in the illustration. And so on one side on the wall of the tavern, there's a little picture of a ghost popping up out of a fountain, and if you look really closely in the wood grain of the frame, it says "Water's haunted."
That's cute.
Yeah, it was really fun.
We had another instance where our pal barbarian, this is a player that multiclasses everything, but I think he was like a paladin barb multiclass when this happened, and he couldn't reach this displacer beast, so he threw his sword at it, and I don't remember how he rolled it, but that was another instance of, now we're going to give you shit for it. And it went into the other games where even my own fighter was like, yeah, fuck it, I'm going to throw my sword. In like a different campaign, totally unrelated.
So Spencer, any like funny jokes that live around your board game tables?
No, not at all.
Okay, well.
100% serious.
No, they come up. It's just one of those things where I don't have any off the top of my head. There are lots of funny situations that happen all the time. Just, you know, for me, whenever, you know, I'm playing a game, I like to have rules. That's why I lean more towards board games, because the rules are much more strict. You've got more of a framework to work in. And so when things go against that, or things go beyond what you'd expect, that's when funny situations can come up. Just one funny thing that happened, and I don't know if anybody else will find it as funny as I did, but it actually happened in that game I was talking about earlier, the Occult Express game. And you can get up and down on top of the train, and inside the train and up on the top, and again, you're programming your cards, and you don't know what everyone else is going to do. And so it just so happened everybody planned their cards just perfectly, to where one person was on this car, and one person was on this car. Actually, two people were on this car, and this guy punched him over to this car, and this guy punched him back, and then for like 3 different turns, the guy got punched back and forth across the 2 trains. It was pretty funny, pretty comical to watch. But
Nice.
everybody laughs at me because I always forget the rules and or teach something wrong, and sometimes you'll get. That's the thing with board games is you can get like almost to the end of the game and realize, oh, you've been playing a rule wrong the entire time. And sometimes if I'm teaching the game, I just kind of not mention it so that everyone isn't like...
Get to the very end of the game and realize you've been playing the rules wrong? That doesn't happen in D&D at all. No,
No, never.
Never. We had that situation when I was playing Pandemic Legacy with some people. We're like, oh, we're doing great. This isn't so bad. And then we're like in December of Pandemic Legacy, and we're like, we have been using one of the roles completely wrong, which made the game so much easier because we were used to the basic game rules. So we were playing that role like the basic game rules. And we're like, this game's not this hard. How is everyone saying it's this hard? It's because we were playing it completely wrong.
I mean,
What role were you playing wrong?
The quarantine specialist.
Oh, no.
God.
So in the regular game, it can stop every city around it. And in Legacy, it only does the city it's in. So it stops the plague from spreading any city that's connected to the one they're in. And in Legacy, they've confined it to just the city they're in. So we were like, this isn't this hard. You position it right here. It's perfect. No, we totally...
Oh.
I'm going to say...
Sounds like that would make it harder, yeah.
Yeah, it's also... The Quarantine Specialist is one of the more broken roles in the original game.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
This is like just kind of makes me think of like how everybody had their own way of playing Uno, and then the Uno Twitter account is sharing the rules, and they're like, someone needs to tell Uno they're not playing their game right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what these rules are that they're telling us, but it's wrong.
Decades of ingrained incorrect playing, the rules have changed.
At what point do you let your fan base dictate the rules of the game you make?
Oh no. Seems like... Oh, he's back. Okay.
The camera cut out.
Oh no. Speaking of technology going wrong.
Right?
Yeah.
Seriously. I
Living
actually,
proof.
going back to what we were just talking about, I gave my daughter, so there's a game that I picked up at PAX East a few years ago called Sparkle Kitty, which is a super fun little card game that you play. You need you need at least 3 people to play it and get a good game going. But basically, the point of it is you have these cards and you play them, and as you play them, you're basically casting a spell. And so it's like this hilarious combination of words. It'll be like, cuddly panda, or something like that, and your cards play similarly to Uno cards. Like, you can you have to match like the color or a symbol or something like that in order to play the next card. And so anyway, there was a new game that came out by the same creator that works very similarly. Like, it's basically took that game and then expanded it out to some other stuff, and like to add in some other stuff. And so I was super lucky that I'm like, yay, thank God I'm in the very, very small group on Facebook that's a bunch of people that like the game Sparkle Kitty, because the creator of these games is in it. So I'm like, okay, so this is how we were playing the game, but I'm not sure if we were doing it right. And he's like, nope, that's right. And I was like, yes, I like when I can access the creator and make sure I'm doing it right. So
Perfect.
That is kind of nice to be able to be like,
That's
hey,
awesome.
creator.
yeah. But it was great, yeah, and it was really funny too, because I gave it to my daughter for Christmas, and a lot of people didn't realize I had backed it on Kickstarter, so I got it like right when it dropped, and a lot of people didn't even realize it was out yet. So people were like, "Oh my God, how did you get that?" And I was like, "I bought it. I ordered
All
it."
right. Well, speaking of asking the creator for clarifications on how to play their games, one of the I'm not sure if controversial is the right term, but one of the more talked about aspects of D&D is sage advice and Jeremy Crawford's Twitter. So first of all, I would like to know from all of you, what do you think of getting rules clarifications and understandings and updates on the game from Jeremy Crawford's Twitter, and how often do you look at Jeremy Crawford's Twitter and sort of look at either the answers he's posted or ask him directly about things related to the game's rules?
So my group looks at the sage advice a lot, and they also think that he's wrong a good number. One of them in the sage advice is wrong every now and again about their own rules, or they disagree or something. I don't know. I don't have that kind of game mastery to know. I just hear them complain about it. I think it's good to know what the creator's intentions are. But usually when they answer a question, there's like other game mechanics they're not considering, or their answer contradicts other game mechanics that they weren't directly asked about. So it's a take it with a grain of salt. If it works for your game, that's great. And I think it's nice to have the creators that are accessible. I also think it's this weird feeling if it seems the creators or somebody else involved in the game may not be exactly in the know of how the game is getting played or how the rules are. It's one of those things.
Don't pay too much attention to them, because I guess my opinion is the books are guidelines. They are not actual rules. Your DM and your table controls how the world works. So, like, yes, I'm going to go for mechanics and how spells reach and things of that nature. But if it's things like, if we're debating at the table what the rule is, I don't care what the creator is going to tell me. It's how does it work for our game?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to make it easier for games, because it's like, otherwise as a DM, I'm going to be looking up rules constantly. I'm going to be trying to look up his thing to see what did they actually mean. But if we at the table can be like, this work? Cool. Let's just go with that and keep moving and just remember that's our rule from here on out. But if you're a rules lawyer, I mean, feel free to follow that stuff. But like Jelly was saying, it's one of those things of, this is such a complex game with so many moving parts. Not everything meshes together well. And sometimes things that go against each other. It just figure out what works for you and what makes it fun.
I think personally, the only people who really need to actively follow that kind of stuff is those that DM for Adventure League. Like, because
That's
that is
fair.
supposed to be as consistent a rule set across all tables as possible. Like if you play eventually table here in PA or Minnesota or wherever, you should be able to go to California and have the same experience, more or less, when it comes to the rules. So like in that instance, I think it's pretty important to follow what the intended creators of the game had in mind. Obviously where it makes sense, because like you said, they have left out some minor things, or was contradicted later from like a thing in Tasha's or whatever. It's like, yeah, sometimes those rulings also need updates based on new content that's been released. I've used it once or twice to try to get an idea of how things work, like the most infamous one, probably morphing someone into a cat and then power warding kill on them. Does that actually work or not? Have fun arguing.
Yeah.
Because there's this bizarre sense of replacement when it comes to hit points. And I could go on a tangent about for like 3 hours about how it doesn't work or how it does work, and it's not really worth the argument. As a DM, I would just go no. And that's when I kind of stopped following it, when they wouldn't answer like that simple question. I was like, yeah, no, like that's actually a potentially game-breaking combination of spells. We need a clear, definitive answer on how you want hit point replacement to work. And they didn't give a good one. I'm just like, no, I'm not really gonna follow this anymore. Like, this is something that my players could try pulling on me, and I'm either coming off as a hard ass, not letting them do it, or I'm going, I don't want you to break the challenge of my game or undermine the other players being able to do anything. So it's just one of those situations, like, we need a clear answer if we never really got one, or if we did, I didn't like it. So
Yeah, and I guess just to kind of add on what you were saying, there is a portion of letting the DM control their game. Because it's one thing it's like, if a player comes to the table and goes, well, so-and-so, Chris Perkins says this, Mike Merle says this person says this. It's like, I need to do this to keep the game working. Because if all of a sudden, like you said, you can polymorph someone into a cat and power word kill them in a turn, well, there goes, the high power lich encounter if I have a bad roll. So no, we're not doing that, because I need to be able to challenge you when it gets hard to challenge you.
that's a fair point. The DMs need a degree of flexibility in rules interpretation. Like I said, outside of adventure leagues, where they should be as close as to intended as possible.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I've been listening to all of this, and I was thinking about the difference between consistent rules in a board game versus consistent rules in a tabletop game. And I think the difference is that in a tabletop RPG, you have to be able to account for players' imagination. Whereas in a board game, like Monopoly, for example, there's not a whole lot, you don't need a whole lot of imagination to be like, I roll a 6 and I move my piece 6 pieces, 6 places. It's not quite the same. Yes, there are rules, but it's not quite the same level of needing to have consistent rules across the board. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to explain it, but I can't really come up with a good way of saying it without being like, I don't know, it's just different.
You got the right point of it's just a difference of how open world the game you're playing is.
Yeah. The way I would compare it is D&D is a lot like a card game like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, in that you have a bunch of different pieces, but there's an enormous number of ways that they can fit together. And if you've actually read the rule book for a game like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, it is like phone book level large. But we don't want to deal with that for a fun RPG with our friends. So some amount of rules streamlining is required.
As someone who wanted to become a regional judge for Magic at one point, you're talking 9 phone books worth of rules interactions. It is.
Kudos to you for wanting to be a judge for Magic the Gathering.
Praise for that. I gave up 2 minutes in. I'm just like, no.
Yeah, it's just, the game of Magic the Gathering is fun, and a lot of the times those rules interactions don't come up. But if you need to know exactly how every piece interacts with every other piece, you either have to memorize ridiculous amounts of rules, which is something that will slow the game down and make it unfun, or you have to make it up yourself. And in a In a setting like Magic the Gathering, that's not something you can do. But in D&D it is, and that's probably what you should do, rather than have to memorize the complete rule set for a game as complicated as either Magic or D&D.
You mean you
rules
don't
matter.
want to learn the difference between the stacks?
They got rid of substacks. It doesn't exist anymore. Scheherazade is not a thing.
And sorry, Spencer, I didn't mean to cut you off on that one.
Fine. I was just saying, when I played my first Call of Cthulhu game, when he told us the rules, and he's like, all right, we're going to start, and here's the setup, and now we go. And I'm just like, okay, so what can I do now? What can't I do? It's like, I'm just so used to having a rule book that says, this is what you do on your turn, these are your options, and you can't do anything else. And so that's comforting to me. And then when someone tells me I can do, well, pretty much anything until I tell you not to, or that doesn't work, I was kind of intimidated by that. But
Yeah,
very...
though I would also argue that's a big part of what makes D&D unique and fun.
But no, I very much agree. Having that, there is a very nice portion of putting down a board game and being like, this is exactly what you can do. You can do it in different ways to make it ingenuity, but here's what you can do. It's like, this is okay. Yay,
Yes.
Parameters. That's
it feels nice.
I'm always a big advocate for have a list, at least to start, because yeah, when you are new into Dungeons and Dragons and people say you can do anything, my brain just turns off. Like, give me a list. Okay, well, here, you're a druid, you can attack, you can take this action, you can do that. But if I don't have like a list that gives me options while I'm learning, I'm never going to get to anything.
Yeah.
The rest of it's all like flavor text that comes in after, you know, like if you know that you can attack, it's like, okay, I attack and here's how, you know, whereas if you're just starting, you can just say, I'm going to attack with my short sword, and that's kind of the end of it. So
Yeah. And it's important that that's there, but it's also important that it's optional.
yeah.
I've found, at least in D&D, like, combat was usually the best place for new players to begin, because even though there are a lot of options to choose from, it is far less than, tell me what your character is going to do to convince so-and-so not to drop you down a well. That's where a lot of people I see freeze up. It's that, oh crap, I have to make a lot of decisions at once. But when it's like combat, it's like, well, what can I do? Well, here's a quick little sheet. You can attack, cast a spell, do this. That stares away
and in
from
combat, it's
casters
easy to
because
understand. Sorry, I think you're cutting out a little bit.
I was waiting for you to finish, and we all just kind of stumbled over each other.
In combat, it's easy to understand what you're supposed to do and what the game expects of you. Whereas in sort of more free and open RP, that's not that easy.
Yeah, puzzle solving is another thing in D&D for new players that is kind of confusing, but I've also found it's a great way for them to begin seeing other options, like using Ray of Frost to slow the descent of something because it slows movement by 10 feet. So like it lets them get used to using less constrained ideas. But like, yeah, you are right, especially for new players, having like a little cheat sheet of just things like to do in combat is a great thing, and a lot of players find comfort in combat, I think, because it is a lot less like I can do anything. The pressure is more on the DM to keep things rolling in combat than it is on the players to keep things running. Because if a DM goes like, okay, so you want to sneak into this, you do this, okay, so you snuck in, you overheard the conversation, what are you doing now? The DM has no control over that. Unless you guys just sit there for too long, and at which point he goes, yeah, there's no way you haven't been noticed at this point. But other than that, it's all on the players to move things forward, and that can be very intimidating.
Yeah.
When you go like, yeah, no, the story's stalled until you do something. So like, yeah, combat, a lot of people just jump in the combat at that point because it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about what to do next, in theory.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's very much a, like, combat is nice in the sense that it can give you almost that sense of security, because it's like, I know that in my turn I can do this, and I can do this, and that's it, you know. And So it is. It's almost, that's a really nice place. You know, like a good, you know, heavy fighting dungeon crawl almost can be a great place for new players to start for just that reason, because it gets them used to the mechanics of this is what you can do in your turn, and you know, everything outside of that is just adding flavor to the world. So but
Very
on that
true.
note, I'm going to pause us here for a quick break. It is that time already. It's 9:06 Eastern already. So we're going to take a quick break and let our guests refill drinks and, you know, hashtag free the pea and hashtag free the water elemental and all that good stuff. And we will be back in just a few minutes. If you have asked a question and we haven't answered it yet, we will get to it after the break. If you haven't asked a question and you would like to, please feel free to drop it into chat during the break. Our mods will make sure that we get it and we can answer it afterwards. So we will see you in just a few.
Okay, are we all?
right, we are back from our break. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking around.
Hello.
And let's see. Nebby, I can take a look at that for you real quick. Give me 1 second. If you, yep, Nebby, you're in. If you haven't gotten the chance to see what our giveaway is, we're going to be giving these away actually on Wednesday at the end of our stream, but we're starting the giveaway tonight because we wanted to give people who could make it to both streams a chance to enter. So these are metal dice from D&D WoW. Trying to get it so you can see how cool they are, but it doesn't really do it justice seeing it on the stream. However, there is a picture of them on our Twitter. And they are really cool color changing dice depending on how you look at them in the light. Their color looks like they change. So you look at it one way and it's kind of a green. You look at it another way and it's kind of like a coppery brass brown. So they are they're very cool. And they are a very nice set. It's a 7 polyhedral set, so you get a full set of dice, and they're valued at almost $40. So we definitely are excited about giving these away. They come in a nice little velvet pouch for you, and we'll put those in the mail as soon as we draw a winner on Wednesday. You do not have to be at our stream on Wednesday to win. But keep an eye on our Twitter and in our Discord, because that's where we'll announce the winner if it's not somebody that's already in our chat Wednesday night. So make sure you get to that ! Ticket to enter. And yeah, let's dive back into the questions. So let's see what we've got. We had a few come in right before we went to break. So let's see. Patch asked, what's your favorite trope to use in-game, either as a player or a DM? And then Nick piggybacked off that and said, what's your least favorite? So
I think my favorite to use as a DM is definitely the Tavern. I just love, mainly because it's me, I'm a foodie, I love crafting menus for them to order from. It's really the only reason.
That's awesome.
And my least favorite... What is my least favorite trope? I'm not really sure I have a least favorite trope. Probably do somewhere. I'll think of it later.
I think in terms of D&D, my least favorite trope is most class-specific tropes, but the big one for me is the horny bard trope.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say.
I second that one for sure. The horny bard is awful.
It's not just like... I don't think it's right in my head to say that all bards are horny. That drives me up the wall. I don't like that.
I've never experienced a horny bard before.
Neither have I, because it's just...
And I think my favorite is something I do with a lot of my characters is I like to do some sort of juxtaposition with them. So like I've got the really small, short, adorable young druid half elf girl that's max wisdom. So, you know, she sounds and she kind of gives off this air of a child, but she's like super wise compared to the rest of the group, sort of thing.
I very much like the Tavern trope. I will second that one. I also am a big fan of the high wisdom, low intelligence trope. I don't know why, but I very much like that dynamic. I hardcore second the hatred of the horny, I will just go horny, charismatic character. It's one of those, it's like for some reason people seem to think that the charismatic character is this sultry thing that can convince a dragon to have sex with it. And it's one of those like, no, man, like you don't have to go. I mean, it's a great aspect to go with, just don't overdo it.
I just wish that when you look at a character that's charismatic, you can show other ways that charisma benefits you. Like, you don't have to bang everything, you can befriend everything.
Yeah, I have a couple characters in our campaign right now that are high charisma, and one of them is they use the charisma because he's super friendly. He likes meeting people, he likes making people happy, and he uses it that way. And our other one uses his charisma because he uses it as an intimidation factor. Using the charisma as a hard opposite, and that's what I really enjoy on those, is using the charisma to do something that we don't generally associate with high charisma in D&D right now.
Yeah, because being high charisma definitely does not mean you have to be a nice person.
No,
Uh,
no.
So I've already said that my least favorite trope. I'm glad you brought that up because I wouldn't have thought of that. But yeah, horny bard definitely. My favorite trope is the backstory I use for almost all of the characters I run, which is I was part of an organized fighting force and became an adventurer to have for freedom in what I pointed my sword at. Like, you know, I used to be a soldier and became an adventurer because I was tired of taking orders. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
That is the backstory I use for a lot of characters.
I think, like Star, I actually like doing the whole high wisdom, low intelligence, but there's a reason. It's because I personally believe myself to be high wisdom, lower intelligence. Like, my wisdom, if I had to stat myself, my wisdom would be higher than my intelligence, in my opinion. And so, there will be times, like, I've played games and my intelligence will be like a 12 and the DM will be like, you should know this. And I'm like, I should, but I, the person, do not. So therefore my character does not. So I tend to like to go with characters that are higher in wisdom because that's more like, you know, experience from being out and doing things and, you know, here's what I've learned along the way kind of stuff, as opposed to, gee, I'm really good at solving riddles, because if I can't solve the riddle, there's no way in heck my character's gonna solve the riddle without the GM giving me the answer. So
Yes.
I wish like people to move away from this idea that stat equals thing indefinitely. Because just because you're high wisdom doesn't mean you're always going to make the wisest decisions.
right.
And everybody expresses their wisdom differently. It depends on how they get it. Like, my druid's max wisdom, my cleric's max wisdom. My cleric is 500 years old. Her wisdom comes from seeing a lot of crap in the world. My druid's wisdom comes from, you know, I've been adventuring for a year and I went from level 3 to like level 12 in the last year. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
As for if we want to switch it over to board games, I am a huge fan of the players versus the game. I guess it's more of a genre than a trope, but players versus the game. So things like Dead of Winter and Pandemic, where you're working together against the game. And I absolutely hate any game that's going to make me do charades or whistle or do something of that nature, like where I have to start, like, acting in D&D, great. We're all doing it. No one's really paying attention to me. The minute you make me charades inside of a board game, I'm out.
What do you think about in Dead of Winter? Do you play? I mean, you've got the possible traitor. So what do you think about that? Like the semi-cooperative game?
Interesting, and I do enjoy those aspects of it as well. Like, I'm not against each other games. Actually, like Among Us and, you know, and Dead of Winter with the Traitor are great aspects. But yeah, Mafia, I think One Night Ultimate Werewolf's not my favorite, but I think it's because I don't quite understand it. But yeah, so those are great. But I love being able to sit next to somebody and us figure out how to beat the game rather than being like, all right, how do I take out your giants so that my halflings can take over the mountains? Like,
I like.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, to your point about Star, about charades and stuff, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I don't tend to like games that make me like get up and do charades and stuff like that. But one game that I absolutely love that could be seen as co-op, I guess, but it's a amazing party game, is Telestrations. And it's basically like Pictionary meets telephone, but you draw it and write it instead of speaking things.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
It is so much fun, and it gets so darn funny, especially, like, honestly, I think the worse drawer you are, the funnier it gets.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's, I don't remember, we still, and this is going back to the joke question, we had a Christmas party several years ago, and we were playing that game. We had like the 12-person game version of it, and so there was 12 of us playing. And what it is everybody gets like this little like flip dry erase board thing. And so you pass it around, like, so there's 12 of them going around. And I don't remember what this person started with, but somehow it ended up with a picture of a dog and a bottle of pills. And the guess that somebody made was like pizza. Oh, no, it was a piece of pizza and a bottle of pills. And somebody was like, pizza drugs. And we were like, what? Like, what does that even mean? But, oh, man, that I love that game. That's probably one of my diehard favorite party games ever on the planet.
Yeah, that's a really, really fun one. They just came out with a new version called Upside Drawn.
I saw that. I haven't played it yet, but yeah.
Bat Duck in the chat asked about the mystery in a box things. I think he's talking about like the escape room games in a box. Those are a blast. I'm a huge escape room fanatic, and so I always try to track down the newest, like their Unlock series or the Exit series. You play through like an hour, and it's like having an escape room experience in your house, and those are a ton of fun.
Yeah, considering we can't really do that not in our house right now, that would actually be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a really cool system.
Has anybody tried one of those ones that's like the To Catch a Murderer, or those Clue ones that they send you multiple boxes where you're supposed to like
seen those.
Yeah, I've heard of them, and they look a little too expensive for my taste.
Yeah.
Not knowing if I'd like it or not.
Is it like one of those subscription box?
Yeah.
Sort of
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, like they send you a clue every like week or so until you like catch the murder or whatever. I was curious if anybody had ever tried those and liked them or what they thought.
I haven't.
I'm going to start a conspiracy theory right now about that. I think it's PDs all around the country using people to help them solve crime. That's what I've decided.
Jerry, we've been working on this for 20 years. Let's try with the public.
Oh, man.
Somebody's watching the news some night like, wow, that's really similar to this card that I got in the mail.
Hey, honey, I just got subpoenaed in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
But we live in Minnesota. No, that's not actually true. I'm totally making that up. I just want to make that very clear for anybody watching, but it sounds like it would be very funny. Oh no!
Oh God! What do we do?
Wow! That was wild!
Too much!
She figured it out. It went too deep.
Now we're all gone.
Let me turn my camera back on. Holy crap! Camera. Hold on. Let me make sure my OBS is still going.
I just say, ooh, after dark.
Tales After Dark.
Stream looks like it's still up and running, so...
So wild. That is the wildest thing ever. Hold on.
After dark.
And we're
Tales
back!
from the Tavern.
You can see all our gorgeous faces now. That's just it. We revealed the truth about those murder mystery in a box games, and now they know we're onto us, and they cut off my internet. No, that was not it. I don't know what the heck happened. My Discord disconnected, and here we are.
It was fucking perfect timing.
That was really funny.
The timing was excellent, though.
Also, by the way, chat, I appreciate you more and more every day when these things happen.
See, Bad Duck, see what happens when you play with conspiracy games?
You get conspiracy prizes.
Patch, send the kids to bed. It's time for aw. Oh, gosh. Chris over here is under the light of God. That's, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess. It's the only light I have, unfortunately. My rooms are shit for streaming.
But,
anyone who knows me knows I'm no angel.
Patch doesn't want zones boosting your ego like that.
Could be. It just matters if you're the fallen variety or not.
Dun dun dun.
So, do we have more questions lined up?
We do. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. I'm just... Okay. Let's see. Zone Smiley has asked, has there been a session, either as a fellow player or a DM, when you were like, They're gonna die, aren't they? Only for them to somehow survive.
All right. Well, I'm going to lead this one. First of all, Kai Zoned. He's one of the players in the campaign I ran.
Nice.
So not going to use an example from his game, but in another game I'm running, the players they were climbing up a mountain. They were weak. They were tired. But they knew at the top of this mountain was glorious treasure. So they made it to the top of the mountain, and at the top was a manticore. And the manticore is like, haha, I will defeat you. The players all roll. The manticore rolls badly on initiative, and the players roll even more badly on initiative. So the manticore has an attack where it can shoot 3 tail spikes. Shoots 3 tail spikes, drops 1 player, and does like 60 to 70% of the other 2's health on the first round. And I was sure that this manticore was going to TPK the entire party, but they got nat 20 death save after nat 20 death save after nat 20 death saves. 3 in 1 combat.
Wow.
And it's just like, we thought they were down, but it's no nat 20 death save. You're over 1 hit points. Walks up, shoots the manticore with something, gets dropped again immediately. Another nat 20 death save. Another one is up, hits the manticore again. This poor manticore is like, what is happening? Why are you not staying dead? And just barely, with the 3rd nat 20 death save, they were able to come back up with 1 hit point, kill the manticore, and claim the most hard-earned treasure of their lives. After that, they went back to the town that they were in, and they were just like, lie down and say goodnight.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, that's
Sanity.
right. I'm gonna say I think it's been the opposite for me. As a DM, I've only had it once, but generally my players go, "He's gonna kill us, he's gonna kill us." I never do. There's only one time that I actually thought I was going to. It was I was right before any of the modules for D&D had come out, so we were using the box set. And there's this cave of 10 Sturges. They're 4th level characters. 10 Sturges should be no problem. No problem at all. I drop all of them except for 1 character who had 10 hit points left. I nearly TPK'd them with 10 Sturges because I rolled crit after crit after crit after crit after crit, and they couldn't hit me to save their lives. It was the most lopsided percent. I'm fairly sure some plans imploded to balance out the statistics of this encounter.
Oh my gosh.
In one of our games, we had to go fight like a young dragon or something. We were like, I wouldn't say like a low level, like somewhere between 5 and 6, I guess. I'm probably even remembering that wrong. But basically, our party of like 6 or 7 adventurers go on to take on this dragon. And then we get to like the part of its lair where we're going to face him off. This thing takes down all but 2 with its breath weapon. We are just down. So it was up to the monk and the paladin, who are at the very back of the marching order, to try to, fight off this dragon and knock him down, which they did before most of us had to make our death roll. So they literally had their turns to change direction of what was happening.
Nice.
Huh.
I guess I haven't really had a situation where we got that close, but I personally put us in a situation where we probably should have, but we got very lucky rolls. My first character was a War Cleric of Tempest, and War Clerics of Tempest go, there's battle, here I go. So we were traveling, and we encountered a army going up against a larger army of zombies. So I decide I'm going in. It's not a good idea, but we're going in. And we had a druid with us that was a gnome druid, so he rode on my back because I was a dragonborn, so I just carried him around. So he came with me involuntarily. We ended up getting into the middle of the fray, and we had this realization that Channel Divinity doesn't have a radius on it. It says any creature that can hear or see you. So he cast the Thunderclap, which our DM rolled, and it pulled the attention of every zombie in the field. And I cast Channel Divinity, and he rolls and he rolls, and he rolls, and every single group of zombies failed.
Wow.
So we ended up destroying 200 zombies with one channel divinity because of lucky rolls, and that is probably.
I hope you got a level up for that one.
Yeah, we did. We did get a level up for that one, but it was one of those situations that it was one of the times I went, "This is what my character would do," and it's really dumb, but it's what she'd do. And I just was lucky enough to have another character with me that was smart enough to go, "I know how your thing works. Thunderclap."
Nice.
So we got lucky. Ken says, "Throw the gnome."
Nothing wrong with a little.
The Aether and Steamworks game I played on Friday, I know I keep talking about it, it's because it's still super fresh in my mind, but that was definitely a we are going to die, we are going to die, we are going to die. It was one of these things where we had one character's little sidekick who was this little, like, robot dude named Marcus. He wasn't like an actual character. He was just sort of like this little, I don't know. He was like, think along the lines of like BB-8 or R2-D2. And so of course, naturally, because it was a streamed game, chat got very attached to Marcus, and Marcus died 3 times. And it was very sad. And then finally Marcus, but with a top hat. He wore a top hat. And he died 3 times, and then finally was able to come back, and that was the end of that. So that was great that Marcus survived. Unfortunately, Marcus's owner died during the campaign, so that was really sad.
Aww.
But the rest of us managed to survive barely. Bat Duck's like, chat saved you guys so many times. The guy who was GMing when he runs the game on the channel that he usually plays on, if chat donates 100 bits, they can give a reroll to one of the players. So chat definitely saved our skins way more than once. And we get to the very end, and it was one of those, okay, roll to see if you can pilot your ship out of the station, as the station is like, crumbling down around you. So I roll because my character was the pilot, because it was her airship, and I rolled a 13, and the GM rolled a 12, and that was how it ended. And it was like, oh my god, we should all be dead right now.
Yeah. All right. Zoned in chat asked me to tell the story of the baby black dragon. So here goes. So first of all, Zoned, who was the party fighter, and the party warlock had a dispute with the party, so they were walking off on their own. Vital mistake number 1, they split the party. So, just the fighter and the warlock were off into a swamp, and I had rolled a random encounter, and the random encounter was a black dragon wormling. So this dragon, puffing its chest out metaphorically, marches up to them and is like, I will take down these 2 adventurers. So it gives a pretty good show of itself, but the fighter and the warlock eventually win, and the dragon, sort of when it gets weakened, turns tail and dives into the water. So it's swimming down as fast as it can, and of course the party warlock and fighter jump into the water after it, and they're like, yeah, we need to get this dragon so that we can skin it and sell its hide and that kind of thing. So they're charging through the water as fast as they can while this little dragon is swimming. And meanwhile, I'm making ominous comments about, you detect something large, very deep in the bottom of this swamp. And they're like, okay, we need to get this dragon quickly, so they're swimming as fast as they can. The dragon's swimming as fast as they can. And meanwhile, I'm still dropping hints like, there's something very large. You feel currents of water moving at the very bottom of this swamp. And they're still swimming down, trying to catch this dragon. Eventually, they catch the dragon. And then I tell them, oh yeah, there is an adult black dragon at the bottom of the swamp. And then they're like, run away, but also carry the small dragon. So, holding the dragon between each other, they swim up frantically, trying to, I believe they had a thing that let them breathe underwater, but they were frantically trying to carry this dragon that was as tall as they were, swimming upwards. And I had the dragon make its sort of wing attack and send pulses of water at them, and they were dodging them as they were trying to carry this dragon. And eventually, the the big dragon starts swimming upwards, and they're panicking at this point, trying to get up. Eventually, they break the surface, and they're like, "Okay, how on earth are we going to escape with this black dragon hunting us down?" So the party warlock drinks a potion, polymorphs into a dire wolf, and just runs. And the dragon chases them through the forest for a few minutes, while the party fighter buries himself in mud and just covers up with the dragon beside him, waiting for the other dragon to leave. And eventually, he excavates himself out of the mud and sneakily drags the dragon off. While the warlock, polymorphed into a direwolf, sprinting as fast as they can, pulls the dragon's attention away. So they do eventually make it out with the baby dragon, and both of their lives intact. And then the next arc of that campaign is they show up, bruised, bloodied, mudded, to the rest of the party. It's like, look what we found! It's a baby dragon! And the rest of the party was like, whoa! I'm sure there aren't any complications that could possibly arise from this. And the next major encounter of the campaign was an adult black dragon.
Oops.
Oh, man.
So yeah, the party almost died twice. The black dragon fight, the most notable thing about it was the black dragon was almost dead, and the party was also almost dead, and the party fighter, again, the person whose idea this has been in the first place, was swinging around his electric spear, and he was one swing away from hitting the dragon and killing it, and he swung his spear, and he rolled a nat 1, but the nat 1 means that his spear malfunctioned, and it detonated, and that detonation killed the dragon.
Jeez.
That's just dumb luck.
That's quite the roller coaster of events.
Yeah.
That
Always
is
have the natural one to
failing
save the
upward.
party.
Yeah, so yeah, that was also another pretty lucky moment. Was the nat 1 saved the party?
Wild.
They will never again be able to say that.
Let's try to think if I had anything for that other than that, but no, that was definitely the biggest one. All right. So this question, mostly is going to apply to anybody who streams. So I know Mel is part of a stream, and I am. Chris does a podcast, so I mean, probably a little bit different. And then, Spencer, do you podcast, or is it a podcast?
Yes, podcast and do streams.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah. So this would apply to you too. So Zeal Zaddy had a good question. How have you handled inappropriate comments by a player on stream?
I guess I've never been in that situation.
Yeah, and any comments that might have bothered me is usually something that's addressed afterwards. Mostly because I need time to process. I'm not a fan of like the on the spot like hey, what was that? Like no.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say like it doesn't really apply to a podcast since it's all done in like before we put it out there. I mean, this has come up like after the fact. I am not someone that has many limits, triggers, or whatever. I'm just an individual who things just roll off. And on our 4th episode, we had a pretty tense thing that was pre-planned. Everyone knew about it, but like there was decompression like afterwards. But like I haven't had any like one single comment from a player that's been like, yeah, no, we need to address this. That also might simply be that we've been playing together for so long now.
Yeah, that's fair. We've had it not so much on this channel. I've seen it happen when I was streaming on other channels, and generally, I mean, it really depends on like the context of like what's happening and what's said. If it's like inappropriate in the sense that like someone lets a phrase slip that might be inappropriate or something like that, because I've been in a situation where that's happened. You know, it's been addressed off stream. You know, like we'll have a conversation quickly as a group and just say, hey, that was not appropriate. Here's why we felt it wasn't appropriate. And then if need be, there was one time I do remember we publicly, I say we because it was the group, but the person who did it publicly posted an apology in the Discord and just said, hey, if this was offensive to anybody, I'm really sorry. I didn't think about what I was saying, you know, things like that. And that was something they took on themselves. That wasn't something that we asked them to do, but, you know, I felt that it was really an appropriate response to it. Sometimes we've had stuff in chat come up, like from, you know, people in chat that will say inappropriate things. We're lucky that it's been really rare, but that's usually, again, depending on severity, it might be like, you know, the mod might purge that comment and then send him a message to say, hey, we don't tolerate that type of language or whatever it may be. Or, you know, there have been a couple of times that we've, like, no questions asked, just banned somebody because they've come in saying things that were incredibly inappropriate about people that were on stream. So, yeah, but it's usually just a quick...
I'm glad that doesn't happen here. Thank you, chat. You're all great.
I think it's also like, as a streamer, the question is it inappropriate for me on the show or is it inappropriate for the audience? And I think that is a boundary that we constantly have to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Because, you know, especially if we're doing this with our friends, we'll have a certain comfort level and we'll approach certain topics or we'll have certain conversations that may not be considered appropriate to the public.
Right. And we actually went over with a lot of our, basically all the cast and staff of the Shared Experience channel recently, and we did have a conversation around like saying things as ourselves versus saying things in character, and like, you know, just being aware that there may be something that your character may say that might, or feel, or think, or respond to that is appropriate for your character, but may not be something that you know, typically, it may not be the same way that you would typically respond. So just, you know, being aware of that, you know, like if, you know, one of the things that we're conscious of is swearing and language use, because, you know, as I tell people before we go live with Tales from the Tavern, we try to operate like on a PG-13 or TV-14, like something you might see on, you know, ABC in prime time, you know, something like that. So, you know, most kids have probably gone to bed, but there might be a few like older kids that are still up and have probably heard some of that stuff. And so, you know, if you have a character like in the course of whatever's going on that lets out some big swear phrase or whatever it may be, might be perfectly acceptable. In a situation like Tales from the Tavern, it might be like, that might not be the best way to answer that, you know? So we just try to like really just take each instance as it comes. I think that's really the only way that you can do it the best, but that's my opinion.
And I mean, I'm obviously not a streamer, but I've watched streams. And I will say I, as a viewer, I appreciate when they kind of come back to it later to apologize or to point something out. I've seen a couple instances where someone is paying attention to the chat and seeing that people are upset about something, so they'll take that moment then and there to do it. But I know, I'm not sure if everybody remembers the stream that happened a while ago where a DM started doing a scene that was inappropriate and no one stepped up to say, hey, we need to stop.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a thing as a player is like, if a DM is going down a road that's not cool, I think that's really where a player needs to step up and say, maybe we should stop and take a break for a minute so we can talk about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I guess my 2 cents is a viewer side of seeing people react to what happens, because it is also kind of nice if, something very bad or very inappropriate is said and someone says, hey, don't do that anymore. We'll talk about it later. Sorry, everybody. We're going to keep going.
Yeah.
And just address it at the time.
I think in those situations where, like, it's important to have, it's important regardless, know the group that you're playing with and have those conversations ahead of time. It doesn't matter if it's on screen or off, if you're sitting at somebody's kitchen table or if you're doing this on, the best pro stream setup ever. If you get into a situation where you could potentially be doing harm, to somebody, regardless of whether it's in character or out, you really need to think about that, because especially in this situation, I know exactly what situation you're talking about, Star. And in that case, it may not have been physically happening to that person at that time, but the description of it could be very traumatic for them for whatever reason, And I think it's really important that you have those opportunities to just stop and say, like, nope, like, we're not doing this. Nope, we're stopping this right now. And like you said, take a break and we'll come back to this in a little bit. So,
yeah, and I guess this is also a time where I will always bring up, like, as a DM, always allow your players to have a red card moment where they can say hard stop. Nope, we're done. We're not doing this. That's really important, because we can go down roads that people aren't ready for or we didn't prepare for. And the situation we're talking about, there's no way someone could have construed that as okay. But always let your players have that moment to say, no, stop. Nope, we're done. We got to move somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got our Sunday game, some content was introduced that bothered me by surprise. Like, I didn't, it was one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I should be able to handle this, and I didn't handle it well. So I've gone up to Lion, that's his game, and I said, hey, I want to keep this here, but I also want you to warn me when similar content is going to happen in session, just so I can brace myself for it.
Yeah.
And that's totally fair.
Yeah, and these things like that is stuff that needs to be addressed ahead of time, and definitely that does need to be talked about. And I think I know what you're talking about too, Star, and it was just not handled well on all fronts.
And I know people are trying to figure it out, but it's not something I really want to talk about on stream, because we don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to.
We don't need to bring any more attention
back
to
up.
it. We can just leave it. Let's just leave it in the abyss where it belongs.
Yep. I'm sure your imagination is close enough.
Well, on that bright note,
sorry.
No, it's fine. It's an important conversation to have, and I'm definitely glad that it came up. But we are at the point now where we need to start wrapping up for the night. So, what I would like to have everybody do is I'm going to have everybody just go around again and remind us of who you are and where we can find you online if you're online, and all that stuff. And so I'm going to go in the reverse order of the way we started. So, Star, I'm going to start with you.
I am Star Shinobi. You can find me at Star Shinobi on Instagram and Twitter. Check me out. I like to put up questions almost daily for us to discuss something about D&D and TTRPG related. Otherwise, I do put up magic items once in a while, and that's a pinned tweet on my page if you want to check those out. I call them useful to pseudo-useful, because some of them are just a little ridiculous.
All right.
Is that me?
Yeah, we are to Spencer next. Yes.
All right, I'm Spencer. I make board game media with a lighter touch, meaning a little bit of humor there. I do like reviews, how to play, tutorials, sketch videos, top 10 lists. So if you want information on hottest board games or games that I think are the best in certain categories, check out the Lighten Up Initiative. So it's youtube.com/the Lighten Up Initiative. I'm on Twitter at hey_lighten up, and I do an occasional stream right here on Twitch, which is at hey_lighten up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for jumping in and joining up tonight. And it was nice to have get to talk about some board games too, because we don't often get to discuss those. So that was a nice change of pace. SmugLookingBarrel, we'll head over to you next.
All right. Well, I'm the SmugLookingBarrel, and currently I don't have a huge presence on the internet, but I'm happy I got to show up and chat here today. You are all wonderful, and I hope to see you all again sometime.
Yes, thank you so much. So I will say that SmugLookingBarrel was a very last minute. Oh my gosh, the person that I thought was going to be able to participate can't participate, and jumped in at the very last minute. So I super appreciate your willingness to be like, I don't know anything about this stream, but it sounds fun. Yeah. So
this is also literally the first time anybody else has seen my face through the internet. Like, Zoned, who was one of my players who was in the chat, sent me a DM and was like, "Oh, that's what you look like." So that was an interesting experience.
Yep, we've had that happen before. We've had a couple of people that have come on before, and people are like, "Oh, you do have a face."
Yes, exactly. But I just wanted to say thank you for being such a welcoming group.
Yes, well, thank you. It was great. And Chris, we'll go to you.
I'm Chris. You can find me at sdamons on Twitter, or you can find me handling the Discount Dungeons Twitter, which is at @discount_DND. We're currently on hiatus. Season 1 has wrapped up, but we are currently filming or recording our Season 2, and it's been so fun so far, and hopefully we'll keep it that way.
Awesome. Thank you again, too, for jumping in. Chris was another last-minute jump-in because I messaged 2 people earlier in the week, and they both said, I can't tell you until Friday, and so here we are.
You know I'll always hop in and help you out, you know?
It's true. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. As we all D&D players know, scheduling is just the most fun.
Right? I know. It's crazy. And Mel.
Hi, I'm Mel. I am an artist and graphic designer on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me with my handle JellyMellyDraws, but I'm also the co-producer of Lionhead Gaming, an actual play stream and podcast of TTRPGs, and we just got back from a hiatus ourselves after the holidays. We're back with our game Song of Rapture, which streams every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. And on the 31st, we're going to be back with our 31st episode of Heroes of Thylia. So if you are into Greek mythology and want to see that play out in a TTRPG setting, keep your eyes out for that. We stream that starting Sunday, coming back January 31st at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's so nice, like, when I actually get to hang out with you. And this was a lot of fun. This was a great conversation tonight, and I greatly enjoy everybody coming to hang out. Just a reminder, again, for the couple of people I saw come in late, ! Ticket if you would like to enter the giveaway for the dice. We are drawing the winner on Wednesday at the end of our stream. We would love it if you could be there, but if you can't, that's okay. You don't have to be present to win this one. We will announce the winner on our Twitter and in our Discord. So, if you're in one of those, we'll make sure we know who you are. But they are very cool metal dice. Yeah, you can only enter once. If you enter tonight, you can't enter again Wednesday. You don't get any bonus for being there twice. You just get the pleasure of knowing that you got to watch a Pathfinder 1st Edition campaign. So, yes, I am Gamer Mom Luna, and this is Shared Experience. We have 2 streams right now. We have Tales from the Tavern Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then we have our Pathfinder 1st Edition campaign, which is on Wednesday nights, also at 8 p.m. That's a 3-hour stream, though. That one goes until 11. And then we are getting ready very soon. Hopefully, we will be launching our third campaign, our third stream, our second campaign, which is going to be a Star Wars campaign. That's going to be on Tuesday nights, so hopefully you can join us for that as well. That's going to actually have Lion from Lionhead Gaming in it as well, and we're starting to see the art, and it's all looking really awesome, and I'm super excited to have that game come to life. I'm not in it, but I'm really excited to see it. So I think that about awesome. Yeah, it's gonna be they're using the Fantasy Flight system for that, so that should be a lot of fun. Yeah, so we are going to pay a visit to another D&D streamer They are trying to see what they're playing tonight. Deadlands. I've never seen that one, so we're gonna go pay a visit to TOG GM, or Total Online Gaming Group, and we're gonna send them some love. So please feel free to drop them a follow and all of that good stuff. And we will see you hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday, but if not, we'll see you next Sunday night here in the tavern. So have a great night, everybody.
Bye.